16 members of the United States House of Representatives have petitioned President Joe Biden, urging him to intervene as they demand the return of detained Binance executive Tigran Gambaryan to the United States from Nigeria. He was arrested by the federal government in February. Gambaryan was initially held at a guest house before formal charges were brought against him and Binance in an Abuja High Court in April. He was accused alongside the company of charges including non-payment of value-added tax and corporate income tax and complicity in aiding customers to evade taxes through its platform. The lawmakers accused the government of Nigeria of taking Gambaryan hostage and thus needs his government's help to be freed. Now, no fewer than 25 suspected killers of Alex Timileyin, a 200-level engineering student at Ajayi Crowther University who was clubbed to death by his colleagues on May 24, 2023, over a claim that he stole a mobile phone, were arraigned on Wednesday before the chief magistrate in Oyo State. The students aged between 18 and 34 have been remanded in prison until July 8th, pending trial. Timileyin was allegedly beaten on May 24 until he passed away inside a hostel known as Shepherd Inn on the school premises by the suspects. The deceased was also said to have had his hair forcefully shaved by his assailants after he was reportedly caught with the stolen mobile phone. Following the incident, the management announced the expulsion of some of the students believed to have taken part in the crime and subsequently handed them over to the police in the state for prosecution. And now to issues surrounding the agitation for a new minimum wage in Nigeria, where the Tripartite Committee on Minimum Wage has continued the wage negotiations less than 24 hours after the organized labor suspended the strike. In attendance were representatives of the federal government, including the Minister of Finance, Wale Edun, Minister of Budget and National Planning, Atiku Bugudu, Minister of Labor, Nkiru Kauye, and representatives of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. On the side of organized labor, the president of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Joe Ajaero, and his counterpart in the Trade Union Congress, Festus Osifo, were in attendance. The committee is in a hurry for an acceptable resolution as the window given by Labour has 4 days to go. Now, there are speculations that the organized labor might have dropped its demands for a new national minimum wage of 494,000 naira and may be settling for 100,000 naira as negotiations continue with the Tripartite Committee on the National Minimum Wage. This, however, has elicited mixed reactions from a cross-section of Nigerians. News Central's Bettina Nweli has been on this story in her report now.
The nationwide strike by organized labor follows the demand for 494,000 naira minimum wage. From the shutdown of the national electrical grid, plunging the nation into total darkness, to disrupted flights across the country over the government's failure to agree on this demand, among others.
If we look at the cost of living, it ought to be, but if we look at what is actually practical, in present-day Nigeria, I don't think our government can meet up with that.
As long as it will bring good results, I'm in support of it. But you know one thing with Nigeria Labour Congress, they are not always stable. You know, when they start up something, the next thing is like maybe they settle them with money and that's all.
This strike is the fourth embarked upon by the Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC, and the Trade Union Congress, TUC, two of the country's biggest union federations since President Bola Ahmed Tinubu took office last year. Paused after a 60,000 naira offer from the government, the union insists on resuming the strike if their new request of 100,000 naira or nothing as minimum wage is not met in the next 1 week.
Labour has been very docile, threatening to go on strikes, and then next thing they call it off for some reason. In a long while, I mean, in about 9 years, we've not had Labour really do what they should. So if government doesn't come to the drawing table, they should go back on strike.
What is 100,000 naira? A man of 3 children or 4 children, can 100,000 pay the school fees? It is not. So it can't buy a bag of rice. So it's nothing to compare what Nigeria is talking about now.
Everything is on the high side. Even if they were to say ₦1 million, it still wouldn't be enough. But judging with the state's, the country's economy and everything, if they agree to 100,000, it won't be bad. At least it will be better than that very meager amount they were giving, because that wasn't going to do anything.
With a break in the nationwide strike for 1 week, life has returned to normal in most parts of the country. From the restoration of power to resumption of work activities in government quarters. It remains to be seen how dogged the NLC will stand in the fight for a better living, or whether they will chicken out like in the times past. In Lagos, for News Central, Bettina Nwili.
Earlier, we were joined by a business and economic analyst, Izu Iwama.
Minimum wage has to be increased through a financial model and simulation. So I think the Nigerian Labour Congress, I wish they had more economics in the system, right? So there's nothing wrong with increasing minimum wage, but if you're going to increase minimum wage, then a lot of things have to be simulated at the same time. I think, for example, government spending has to come down while minimum wage goes up a bit. Right? If you look at the average amount a lawmaker is earning and the average amount his driver that is driving him is earning, you get to understand how far that variance is, how unfair that system is. So why there isn't that same energy? Because once you fight this fight, you can't come back to fight again. So fight everything all at the same time. It's perfect time to solve fiscal policy problems. For the last 1 month, 1 year, we've been talking about tax reforms. We haven't seen any tax reforms yet. Right, every single ministry in the federal government is acting like Zacchaeus. You know, Zacchaeus, the tax collector in the Bible. Everybody. So about the same time, you're increasing so many things at the same time. So truthfully, the 400,000 naira was NLC also being a joke. There's no way 400,000 naira you can pay that, especially when you understand macroeconomics, understand what the spiral effect of wage increase does to everybody else.
In the meantime, striking workers of the Delta State House of Assembly staff under the umbrella of Parliamentary Staff Association of Nigeria have suspended the strike embarked upon last Wednesday, but with a condition. The workers gave leadership of the House 4 days within which to resolve the impasse that led to the strike. The consequences of failing is that the strike will resume without further notice. Recall that the workers had embarked on the strike due to non-implementation of the staff consolidated legislative salary structure upon assumption of office by the governor of the oil-rich state.
So we went to discuss with the state government, and His Excellency assured us that within the next 48 hours, approval will be granted for the implementation of the consolidated legislative salary scale for workers of the Delta State House of Assembly. So we decided to summon them to a meeting, inform them of the good news so as to suspend the strike action they embarked on last week. And as I speak with you, they are very, very happy with the outcome of our interface with the governor, and they have suspended their strike action.
Once you have issues, you must listen to people when they come to you for negotiation. So since we have those assurances, we decided to listen to them. So I hope that at the end of today, we shall have good news to tell our staff.
Africa is deemed to be a consumption-dependent continent, and research further proves that 1 in 5, that's 20% of the world's consumers, will live in Africa in the coming decade. Furthermore, the largest African economy, Nigeria, had a trade deficit of 7.37 trillion naira in 2020, with total imports standing at 5.92 trillion naira in the fourth quarter of 2020, which was an increase of only about 10% compared to the third quarter of the same year. Imports accounted for 65% of total trade, while exports accounted for a measly 35%. as revealed by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics. These data are a pointer to the fact that Nigeria is mostly import-dependent, which begs the question, how does the country make a transition from consumption to production? How does it leverage the array of raw materials and natural resources within its borders for increased productivity? Now, to respond to these questions that are begging for answers, I am being joined by a strategy consultant, Dikpo Oyewole. Dikpo, good morning. Good to have you here on the news.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, Dikpo. Now, Dikpo, given Nigeria's abundant raw materials and natural resources, and we do have a lot of it, what strategy can be implemented to maximize domestic production and also reduce reliance on imports?
Well, first thing we need to look at is power, and I think that's really quite a given if we look at it. There must be power to ensure that productivity happens within the system. So either we're talking manufacturing or even just your regular office work, we need to have stable power. Unfortunately, a couple of days ago, we had labor shut down the national grid. Different conversation for another day. But before that, we've had the grid collapse time and again, comes back on every 2 days. We need to see how we can stop the issue of power. When we're able to stop the issue of power, we have said it time and time again, certain things just fall into place. When we're able to stop the issue of power, there is no economy today that is advancing, that is making any tangible progress, that hasn't been able to solve the issue of power. Once we're able to solve the issue of power, we will find that certain other things that we complain about will just get knocked off automatically, because by itself, the system is more productive, and then certain excuses and challenges that have been adherent with the lack of power will no longer be within the system. So we need to sort power, and we need to sort it now immediately.
Well, Dikpo, many would argue chicken or egg situation. You say power, some other people say policies. What can the government do when it comes to making policies that can help incentivize the local production and also help create conducive environment for these businesses, including your power? I'm not putting that aside. But what about policies?
Yes, I mean, policies have a strong place, because in the end, whatever we're trying to execute in the marketplace, most times is always dependent on policy. And I tell folks, especially small businesses, that you're just one policy away from going out of business. Because, I mean, a couple of weeks ago, if not a month or two, the Lagos State government announced that a type of takeaway pack, what we call takeaway pack, would be banned. And the notice was short, and we're saying that what happened to the people that just imported a new batch of it, some people that had their own new batch coming from abroad. I mean, so you're just one policy away from going out of business. So yes, government policies have a strong place, but we must also understand that aside from policy, after the policy has been set, what is really obtainable in the real world scenario? What is obtainable in the marketplace? If there is no power to drive those policies, to drive productivity that those policies have been able to, or that are expected to make possible, then nothing happens. So yes, we're not saying that power has to work independently. Power and policy, they have to work together to ensure that we have a more productive system and that we are not just a consuming economy, but a more productive one.
Then again, Dikpo, early 2024, the president was all over the world trying to garner support, or at least, get investment into Nigeria. Foreign investment now is the question. How can Nigeria, and we've seen plenty of these multinationals leave Nigeria, but how can we at this point attract these investments, foreign investments, given the conditions that we have on ground?
Oh, well, we do have to look at increasing investor confidence, and how we can get to do that is to show that we're serious and we are indeed open for business. Now, how we can do that is, I mean, we talked about power. Another thing we need to look at is security, because nobody is going to stay in a place where it isn't secure. Today, we have a lot of folks today that are leaving the country, relocating. Some it's not because of economic reasons, some it's because of security reasons, because of recent experiences they've had with different kinds of gangs and groups over the years, and they said, you know what, I don't think I'll be able to live very long if I continue to stay in this country. So we must be able to look at, yes, we talked about power, we talked about sound policy, but we must also be able to look at policy. We must be able to look at policies, we must be able to look at power, we must be able to look at security. When we address the security concerns that we have, investors are more confident to say that, we're not just sending our money across. We can also send personnel. We can also send technical support. We can also send people that will come around to help set up these businesses and help ensure that our investments thrive very, very well. But until we're able to solve these challenges, it will be a longer conversation, having to talk to investors and having to convince them a lot more as to the reason why they need to invest in Nigeria. If the indices are there and they are clear that Nigeria is a good place to invest in, a lot of people will come in to invest in it. And as much as we say that, yes, certain companies leave the country every other day, same way some folks are leaving, same way some folks are coming, okay? So, yes, it depends on what perspective you're looking at it from. But will we rather have the ones leaving stay? Yes, we would. And we would rather have an increased number of the ones coming in. Of course we would. But we must be able to look at how we address these challenges importantly. Power policy, security, they are true benchmarks to ensure that investments are brought into the country at this time that we really need it critically.
Well, Dikwa, thank you very much. You summarily put it so well, power policies and security, and we're good. Thank you for joining us this morning. Now, a civil society group, the Socialist Movement of Africa and the Rivers Economic Recovery Initiative, is demanding a probe into Nyesom Wike's administration as the governor of Rivers State. The group made this demand while speaking with newsmen in Lagos in the wake of the recent allegations brought by Governor Siminalayi Fubara that his administration inherited 34 uncompleted road projects worth over 225 billion naira from his predecessor. The group alleged that the ongoing political crisis between both parties is simply a distraction from the corruption allegations. They also demanded a criminal prosecution of anyone found wanting in the mismanagement of Rivers State funds, especially in the former governor Nyesom Wike's administration.
There is this outside possibility that the political impasse is part of a well-orchestrated script to allow the failings of the immediate past government to be swept under the carpet. Gentlemen of the press, SMA is further interested in Governor Fubara's getting to the root of how Wike, for 8 years, used the name of Rivers State government for a land-grabbing racket that is threatening the reputation of the state while leaving many citizens dislocated and almost destitute. We want to categorically declare that the only time there will be issues is if Governor Fubara fails to do the needful for the people of Rivers State by setting up a panel of inquiry to investigate the 8 years that Nyesom Wike mishandled and misappropriated the resources of the state. Probing Wike's tenure is not politics but bringing accountability to bear to ensure that the right precedent is set for the development of the state.
Look at Rivers, that is an oil-producing state, for that matter, has been underdeveloped. So we're saying that, Mr. Governor, you have a duty to Nigerians, we have a duty to the people you have sworn to oath to protect, to ensure that the needful is done in this matter, because posterity will not forget you, or will not forgive you.
And you're welcome back. Now, stakeholders or electoral stakeholders in Nigeria have called for far-reaching reforms in the nation's electoral process to improve credibility of future polls. This was during a session organized by the Electoral Hub in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, where stakeholders made far-reaching recommendations to improve the nation's electoral process. Amadine Uyi has this report.
Despite already spending 25 years of uninterrupted democracy, political experts say Nigerians are still ignorant of the political process and the results collation process after elections.
People do not, there are so many politicians and political parties who do not even know that for you to be declared as a president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, that you must score majority of lawful votes cast and also get the geographical spread. And that if nobody gets that geographical spread, another election will be conducted with the same threshold. So I think that there's lack of knowledge in terms of some of the things we do.
At this session organized by the Electoral Hub in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, political stakeholders in Nigeria say there is still so much to be achieved to grow the nation's democracy. The Inter-Party Advisory Council, a coalition of several political parties in the country, say Nigerians must be encouraged to participate in the process. They also used the opportunity to advocate for local government autonomy.
Citizens should be encouraged to actively participate in grassroots politics that guarantees free, fair, and credible local government elections. It is in view of this that IPAC also demands for local government autonomy. INEC must be strengthened to discharge its statutory duties and be truly independent to conduct credible elections.
Other stakeholders present gave far-reaching recommendations to officials of Nigeria's electoral body present, saying the nation's political process is in dire need of reforms at all levels.
We must provide exemplary, transparent, and credible leadership in political party administration and call elected public officers to order if they deviate from the manifesto of their respective party. It is time to sanitize our political process.
Internal party democracy has been the bane of our democracy because it is for sure that our political parties have not gotten it right, and we continue to have inter-party squabbles within our political parties, most especially within the forefront political parties.
The Electoral Hub also unveiled a book on election management in the country aimed at deepening Nigeria's electoral process. In Abuja for News Central, I am Amadine Uyi.
Now, the Adamawa State Independent Electoral Commission has convened a meeting with party leaders in Yola, the state capital, ahead of the upcoming local government election. The chairman, while addressing newsmen after the meeting, says that the commission is working tirelessly across board to ensure the poll is credible. He also appealed to citizens to come out in large numbers to exercise their franchise, saying there is a need for active participation in the democratic process. The local government election is scheduled to hold on Saturday, July the 13th, following the expiration of the tenure of the former council leaders.
Met with our electoral officers. That's our planning. We have met with our electoral officers. We have finished our budget, just waiting for procurement process. And inshallah, maybe by next week, we start ordering for the print of our materials. Election normally is the logistic aspect of it. If the logistics is good, the election will be good. So we are seriously working day and night on the logistics. And I want to assure the people of the state that we are going to be ready for the election as a plan for the 13th of July 2024. So far, we have met with the political parties today. From the speech of the chairman, you can attest that they are all happy and they are all prepared to partake in the forthcoming local government election. We are thinking we'll have a dissenting voice on the date. But all of them agreed on the date that they will be ready for the 13th of July 2024. The assurance we have given them is that we are going to do our best to give them very free, fair, credible, and acceptable election, perhaps for the first time in the state. This is the assurance I and my commission has given the political party.
A train traveling from Abuja to Kaduna has derailed at Asha Stadium, leaving many passengers stranded in the Federal Capital Territory. Recall that on May 26, an Abuja-bound train derailed along the Abuja-Kaduna route, leading to the passengers being stranded in the Jere area of Kaduna State. This marks the second instance in 2 weeks that the train has derailed. And away from that, the Nigerian Senate has considered a bill to establish the National Animal Husbandry and Ranchers Commission. The legislation seeks to address the prolonged conflict between farmers and herders, advocating for a nationwide ban on open grazing and the establishment of ranches. The proposed legislation, which was sponsored by Senator Titus Tarenga, representing Benue Northwest, sought to control and regulate cattle-rearing ranching business across the country. The bill specifically proposed that ranches should be established in pastoralist states without forcing it in other states that do not have pastoralist communities.
Well, all these Fulanis are Nigerians. They don't even benefit from government. They don't enjoy schools. They don't enjoy hospitals. They don't enjoy any roads. All the housing programs done by government, and they don't enjoy them, nothing. So to just throw them away like that because they happen to come from they are assumed to come from states that may not have even enough water, enough grazing area. And you say you can only be done in that state. I think it's not going to work. If we want to solve this problem, which is a national issue, we should approach it with open mind. Where you have enough land, where you have land that can serve as cattle ranch, with water and enough grasses and other food for the animals, we should be magnanimous enough and realistic enough to encourage and in fact support the establishment of ranches in those areas. But to confine them to one area it will not solve the problem. So what I said, we must approach this matter in good faith.
But going by this bill, it will compound our crisis in Nigeria. Some people close their eyes on what is going on or what lead herders to go against farmers. There is so many issues which we need to attend. Mr. President, we used to see where herders and their cattle are pursuing, killing them, destroying their property.
For customers of the now-defunct Heritage Bank, there is no cause for alarm over deposited funds. The Nigeria Deposit Insurance Corporation has assured bank customers that their money is safe. The corporation gave the assurance in the nation's capital, Abuja, while promising that it is ready to commence payments to customers of the liquidated bank. News Central's Joshua Emarai attended the briefing and now brings us this report.
Customers of the liquidated Heritage Bank can now breathe a sigh of relief following the recent announcement by the Nigeria Deposit Insurance Corporation. At a press briefing in the nation's capital, Abuja, the corporation announced there is no cause for alarm as it is ready to refund customers their savings within the next 1 week.
Actually, the process is highly intense, and probably that is why the Act contemplated that we should pay within 30 days. But we are going to pay within 1 week, less than 1 week. For BVN, we can actually use it to scan the system and say, okay, you have an account in Bank X. So you really don't need to come because the BVN has all your biometrics to say that you are the one. And if that account is linked to that BVN and another account, we have no doubt that you are the same person. So that's why we say you don't need to go through that hassle to come forward for verification. But for customers who have only account with Heritage, they really need to come forward to tell us that, okay, this is where you are going to pay my insured amount so that we can pay it. That is the essence of that.
The managing director says that insured depositors of the bank will, however, receive top priority.
The most important thing is to make sure that depositors do not lose their money. You understand? So what's within the creditors, they don't lose their money. You understand? That is why we need to now be able to pursue to make sure that we recover and we pay all the claimants, starting with depositors and eventually creditors and even the shareholders if there is surplus.
The managing director also urged the judiciary to expedite the cases related to the bank's liquidation, saying the corporation is ready to resolve all issues causing uncertainties. In Abuja for News Central, I am Joshua Emarai.
Now, stakeholders in Nigeria have called for an end to all forms of torture and ill treatment of suspects and alleged offenders, especially as a means to extract confession. Now, this was as they met in Abuja under the umbrella of national preventive mechanisms, saying that despite international and national laws against torture, law enforcement agencies have continued to engage in the practice, which gives the nation a bad image. Marvelous Obumanu tells us more.
Nigeria has established a National Committee on Torture as a national preventive mechanism for ending torture at the domestic level in accordance with the international conventions and protocols signed. This gathering of stakeholders is one of several engagements to strengthen efforts aimed at preventing and ending torture.
Torture is a grave violation of human rights that has no place in any civilized society. It reflects unimaginable suffering on its victims and undermines the very fabric of humanity and democracy.
we say that that is not the best way to extract confession from anybody that is alleged to have committed any crime. There are so many other ways.
The era of torture is gone in the activities of the Nigerian police force, especially when taking statements from the suspects.
People with disabilities are always in torture because the entire system is not conducive. It's not disability friendly. So as long as it is not disability friendly, then people with disabilities go through a lot of torture.
While the use of torture as a means of getting information or confession from perceived offenders by law enforcement agencies is widespread in the country, this, however, is illegal, according to Section 34 of the nation's Constitution and the Anti-Torture Act of 2017.
When you hear the word torture, what comes to mind mostly is that law enforcement agencies, the military, the police are the ones very much involved in it. But recently it has taken another dimension where civilians are the ones torturing these men in uniform. A clear example is the one that happened in Delta State, happened in Abuja and Umuahia.
When you slap a policeman, tear a policeman, or beat a policeman or somebody in uniform, you're torturing the person. When a husband denies his wife food or beats her up, he's torturing her. When women go to their villages and bring a house help to come and support them in running their homes, and you use razor blade or pepper or hot water, or you stab the baby or such a child, you're torturing the person.
It is expected that this dialogue by stakeholders comprising law enforcement agencies, legal practitioners, and the National Human Rights Commission will put in place mechanisms to ensure compliance of existing laws against torture so that the practice can be eliminated in Nigeria. In Abuja for News Central, Marvelous Oboman.
Now, every June 5 is World Environment Day and held annually since 1973. The day raises awareness, mobilizes action, and promotes environmental sustainability. In this report, News Central's correspondent Austin Azu seeks to examine how Nigerians can sustain the environment.
World Environment Day is observed annually on June 5th to raise awareness on climate change effects, including global warming, rising sea level, deforestation, among others. The 2024 theme is Accelerated Land Restoration, Desertification, and Drought Resilience. In Delta State, the day is being marked with planting of trees, an awareness campaign by the Ministry of Environment in collaboration with the Nigeria Institute of Public Relations Delta State Chapter. They walked from the State Secretariat complex through the Okpanam Road, planting trees along the road to sensitize residents of the state on how to preserve the environment. Speaking to newsmen, the State Commissioner for Environment, Ejiro Jamani, and the State Chairman of the NIPRO, Godfrey Osakwe, called on everyone to make positive impacts by embracing sustainable practices in daily lives, conserving resources, and advocating eco-friendly solutions. They encouraged all to take steps like planting trees, reducing waste, or supporting renewable energy as conscious efforts to preserve the environment.
We are telling the public that they should restore the environment. Like when we started with tree planting, and tree planting is very important. When our forefathers handed over the environment to us, it was not like this. It is our activities that has caused us the climate change that we're experiencing. So planting tree is we are trying to restore the environment.
Well, beyond the World Environment Day, we're also using it to mark our 60th diamond anniversary, which also entails us working for economic transformation and tree planting exercise. The idea is that we cannot live in isolation of the current reality in Nigeria. We can see the adverse effects, the climate change. So we know that every human being must try to insulate our environment by planting trees every now and then.
According to the UN Convention to Combat Desertification, up to 40% of the planet's land is degraded, directly affecting half of the world's population. The number and duration of droughts has increased by 29% since 2000. Without urgent attention, droughts may affect over 3/4 of the world's population by 2050. In Asaba, for News Central, Austin Azu.
Now joining me on the news to discuss this, an environmentalist and Secretary, Delta State Chapter of the Nigeria Institute of Public Relations, Enebeli Ochonogo. Enebeli, you're welcome. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good. Now, what specific technological solutions can we implement or can be implemented to address environmental challenges? Let's take an example. Let's talk coastal flooding or maybe desertification in Nigeria.
Thank you very much for having me. Please pardon me for being in a background showing dark background because I just took the light. It's an unusual way in Nigeria. However, as you rightly said, yesterday the world marked the World Environmental Day 2024, and a lot of issues came up. A lot of it had its own theme, but going straight to your question, issue of coastal flooding and desertification, there are many ways that we can use to mitigate the challenges of coastal flooding, especially when it comes to our own Nigeria, where there are a lot of issues about coastal flooding and the coast being washed away. Again, the Niger Delta area, Delta State specific, there are a lot of issues about the coastal flooding. But one of the ways technologically that can be used to avoid continuous destruction of the coastal area is early warning. We should implement the early warning sign of warning the people and keeping up to date to issues that affect the coast. Every now and then, every year, we're going to hear about flooding, and the focus will now be on people living within the coast. We must have to use this early warning system. There are a lot of technology involved, and also listen to the Nigerian Meteorological Department, who gives us every warning about flooding, yearly based, every year, January, they already add to the warning on November. This system should be well employed, education taken to the grassroots. With this, there'll be no much issue about the coastal flooding. And for instance, in trying to mitigate this problem, like in Netherlands, they have the data works. This data works, they build an embankment. They used to arrest the issues of coastal erosion by building a constructing project that protect the Netherlands environment. We should be able to do that in Nigeria. And the flooding or deseating the waterways is also, we go a long way also as part of the technology to ensure flooding. Coastal flooding is averted in Nigeria because it has become one of the biggest challenges we have in this country, especially when flooding comes in. Like so, 2024, we have been one. Hello?
Yes, yes. I was going to ask you of specific strategic measures that Nigeria could actually adopt to help better the effects of climate change, particularly when it comes to the vulnerable coastal areas we're talking about.
Fine. Thank you very much. We have to build dams within the coastal areas. When we build dams, the dams will be a set of collection points, taking water from different channels to that dam. That one will reduce the effect of the flood on other communities or land areas within the coastal areas. We must have to ensure we implement this policy. Every now and then, we have this problem of the dam in Cameroon being opened, and we're always afraid of what's going to happen in Nigeria. The implementation of building the dam along that route need to be implemented. That action needs to be implemented. That dam must be built. We equally have to build locks around. These locks will help to reduce the influx of water from adjoining streams into the main basin to reduce the effect. Definitely, the rivers must have to be discharged into the main basin. But the effect will be reduced when we build such locks and dikes and storm gauges that will help to reduce storms when it happens. These are the few ways we can use to mitigate environmental issues within the coastal area of Nigeria. For instance, like Lagos now. Lagos, we need to build that delta wall, just like in the Netherlands. Today, we are talking about constructing a coastal road, and the environmental impact assessment was not done before it started. It stopped midway. So these things need to be taken into consideration before we carry out any project that will affect our coastal areas. There are many of actions we are taking as affecting it. But these issues, like the dam building on our coastal areas, need to be built seriously.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Anibali. Thank you. Now, moving on. The African National Congress, ANC, is holding its crucial Special National Executive Committee meeting in Bucksburg, east of Johannesburg, this morning to discuss various options to constitute a government within the next 2 weeks. For the first time in 30 years, the ANC has failed to obtain majority votes to form a new government, with their votes falling to just over 40% nationally, with voters turnout at 58.61%. On Wednesday, ANC spokesperson Malengi Bengu said the ANC is looking at the idea of forming a government of unity or a minority government. Meanwhile, some party members say the ANC Democratic Alliance marriage is the best option for the country's stability, while others, including alliance partners, have strongly rejected the deal. Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin calls for Moscow to build up relations with the Taliban government as a delegation visits Russia for the St. Petersburg Economic Forum. The comments come at a press conference with foreign news agencies where Putin threatened to arm countries that could strike Western interests in response to their arming of Ukraine. Putin also spoke out about the decision not to invite Russia to the 80th anniversary of the Normandy landings.
Это тонкий, очень важный вопрос, но надо выстраивать отношения с правительством Талибана. И в целом у нас контакты есть. Я знаю, что и Афганистан это развивает. Будем двигаться дальше. Но надо же как-то налаживать отношения с соседней стороной. Тем более, что если вас только это интересует, я могу сказать, что об этом, как правило, вообще никто никогда не говорит. А если говорят, то, как правило, извращают реальные цифры. Но я могу вам сказать совершенно уверенно, что наши потери, особенно если это касается, к сожалению, невосполнимых потерь, так, они, конечно, в разы просто меньше, чем с украинской стороны. То Черчилль говорил в свое время, или Рузвельт о вкладе Советского Союза.
Sports now. Nigeria Premier Football League side Abia Warriors advanced to the semi-finals of the President Federations Cup after a 5-4 penalty shootout win over Sokoto United, while Kano Pillars edged out Sunshine Stars 5-3 on penalties. Kebbi United also ended the run of EFCCFC with 4-3 win in a penalty shootout after it ended goalless in regulation time, and El Kanemi Warriors got the better of Inter Lagos 2-1. The last 4 teams in the 2024 President Federation Cup have now been confirmed as 2 NNL and NPFL teams, respectively, will fight for a place in the final. The semi-final pairings will see Abia Warriors confront Kano Pillars, while Kebbi United battles Sokoto United in an NNL affair. The Confederation of African Football has debunked the rumors that the 2025 AFCON has been postponed. Earlier, viral reports suggested that due to the new version of the FIFA Club World Cup, which will be held from June 15 to July 13, 2025 in the United States, the AFCON would be postponed till January 2026. However, CAF, on their official X handle, denied such reports, saying that reports of AFCON 2025 postponement are untrue. The CAF Executive Committee will meet, deliberate, and decide on the AFCON 2025 dates. CAF will thereafter issue an official statement on the matter. In the world of tennis, Russian teenager Mira Andreeva became the youngest Grand Slam finalist, or semi-finalist, since 1997 with a shock victory over second seed Ariane Sabalenka, who was struggling with an apparent illness at the French Open on Wednesday. The Russian is the youngest woman to reach the last four at a slam event since Martina Hingis at the 1997 US Open. Sabalenka called for multiple medical timeouts as she complained of not feeling well, and Andreeva Ehi was playing in her maiden slam quarterfinal. Eventually took advantage with a composed display. Will now face 12th seed Jasmine Paolini for a spot in the final on Thursday. And that's all the news this hour. Thank you very much for staying with us. But before we go, let's take another look at some of the major stories. Federal government, labor, private sector resumed negotiations after strike. 16 U.S. lawmakers have written Biden and demanded return of Binance boss from Nigeria. And we also told you that Chadian Minister has said relations with Russia do not affect France ties. Now do remember to send your eyewitness reports to the WhatsApp number on your screen right now. And remember to follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and of course on YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Mazino Appeal.